Listen, I want to tell you something, right? And I want to be really clear about this, okay? Because a lot of people out there are really lost about this particular issue, okay? They really are. You know, when you look at freedom fighters and truth fighters all over the world, okay, everywhere around the world, just take a look at the tools they use. I mean, just stop and think about it, okay? Most people argue, debate and debunk about what they believe in, right? Okay, argue, debate and debunk all the time. Conquer and divide, using the same tools over and over. I mean, come on. You got to start using some basic common sense here and stop thinking all the time with a high IQ. That only makes you good at what you do, but in fact not intelligent. Let me tell you something, right? And I really hope and pray with all my heart that every single one of you out there watching this video is going to sit down and listen with your heart, not with your mind. I want to tell you something, okay? I made a lot of videos about this. My father brought me up to be worthless and said I'd never man up to anything. And you know what? That was the greatest tool embedded into me. I was programmed to believe that. I was rejected, went to school, got my head punched in every day, left school at 12 years old. I couldn't read and write. I moved to Australia in 1970 with Red and Freckles and the first name Kim and couldn't speak English. The perfect trifecta. Went to school for 2.5 years. I barely learned to speak English, man. I couldn't read and write. Bill Gates, when he was 24 years old, in front of the whole world, they said, Bill, how did you think of all this? He became the richest man in the world in 48 hours at 24 years old. And the media press that he had, that was held all over the world, we all saw this. And I sat there and watched this myself. They said, Bill, how did you think of this? You didn't even have an education, you were literate and you couldn't read and write. He said, whatever I can't think of, I'll hire the person that can. Out of the 300 top millionaires in the world, 60 of them couldn't read and write, were literate, and also had ADHD. Do you know that? The biggest entrepreneurs, self-taught in the world. So just try and think about that for a moment. When you talk about someone who's humble, who's a mastermind, that can think outside the mind, it's not with the tools that you think. It's not with a high IQ and being sophisticated with education and can read and write. Not at all. And we've proven that time and time again. We can move 7 times faster than you can think. Bruce Lee can master his mind by 24, and he can move 7 times faster than any human being could think. Right? By mastering his mind and not allowing his mind to master him with a high IQ. That only makes you good at what you do, to be productive and to consume too much, because that's all you do. Conquer and divide, right? To be competitive and to consume. So that's the tools you use with selfish, egotistical, judgmental and competitive behavior. And when you can't wake up to that, you can't wake up to jack shit. Now, you know, I thank God that my dad rejected me and told me that I was worthless and would never man up to anything. And I'll tell you why. Because I sat on the fence and always sat back and observed things, right? I was drowned in a bathtub at 2 years old. Mum said I was dead and they run me to the hospital and revived me. I don't remember. I OD'd at 18 years old and walked around like a zombie for a week, right? Went through something you can't explain, okay? So, you know, at 18 years old, I also was involved in a car accident where I hit a car on a motorbike at 140 kilometres an hour, nearly cut the car in half. I flew into mid-air at 140 kilometres an hour and somersaulted for the next 100 metres. Do you know what that does to a body? Can you imagine jumping out of a car at 50 kilometres an hour? Try 140. And then landing on the bitumen and rolling for the next 100 metres. Just try it. See how you go with that. See how that works in your biological system. If that doesn't shake you up, nothing else will. I took drugs to numb myself because I was depressed and got my head punched in every day and rejected by my dad. So I learned to think instinctively and open up my third eye, because drugs are a comfort, right? To help you cope in life, isn't it? So it helps you think outside the mind, because your voice in your mind that tells you you're worthless and piece of shit all the time. Because that's how you get programmed to believe that. So your mind will always tell you you're worthless and you're never going to mount up to anything. And then you fight with yourself and the voices in your mind, because you're programmed to use those tools one way or another. And my dad programmed me to believe I was worthless and would never mount up to anything. So I always sat on the fence, not far left, not far right, not biased, because my words were never worth anything to anybody. So I'm glad I was stupid and dumb, no education, and sat back thinking I was worthless and would never mount up to anything. It was the greatest thing I ever learned in life. You know why? Because I'm recorded today by the biggest think tank in the world as the biggest mastermind on the planet. Now, you can think what you like, but you can't master your mind, because it's mastered by the voices in your mind. That's why you take drugs to numb yourself if you can't cope in life. That's why you have so many addictions in this world, okay? And you suffer the human condition every day of your life because you've been mentally institutionalized to suffer. And then you become sensitive and highly emotional, and then your emotions control you. Look, culture changed. The Vietnam War in the 60s changed the whole world and put them into that much fear and polarized into televisions. Then they started to make ads, right, that hits your five senses like a cocaine commercial. Psst, and then you want one. And that worked really well. I saw it change. Then we had the Cold War, right, and people were polarized to the TV, right, in fear. And they started to change culture that much, right? You saw what 9/11 did, or maybe you didn't. Because we had trust and faith in people and talked to people in the street until social media come in. We watched how things got molded through TV and the culture changed through these events, right? Then we had New School come in the 80s, the Millennium Age. Listen, you can buy ornaments all over the world about 1960 being the last human being born on Earth. The best time to be born was 1960. The last human being born was 1960. Because it's true. Because the culture changed in humanity ever since has changed and all of that much that everyone thinks too much and thinks 7 times more than they did in the 60s and consumes 7 times more in a marketing strategy. And what do we know? Gene defects and mental disorders have gone from 2% in 1960 to 54% by 2019, accelerating 7 times faster. And the last 3.5 years, right, mental disorders went through the fucking roof. So did suicide rates. So it's now proven 3 months ago, it did in fact accelerate 7 times faster. And you can see that with the agenda unfolding now, right, to mold people, right, into a culture to be controlled by stress, fear, and anxiety, to be more manipulated every single day, right, through every single one of these events. 9/11, before 9/11, we could all talk to friends, right? Back in the 80s, we had doors and windows open, and we knew everyone in the streets. Now everyone lives in a bubble and gives their kids an iPhone at 5 years old, and they're sexually frustrated at 8 years old, and they think it's their best friend by the time they're 12. So does every millennium under 40. Because they all came out with New School and said, oh, old school's out, and started to disrespect the other's voice and knowledge. Now they believe in their own truth, and they become their own worst enemy because their mind will spread 60 games on them, so they abolish that. Never believe nothing, you only have what you ever trust what you feel. Now it's the opposite way around, they're inverted, right? They don't trust their feelings anymore, right? Okay, it doesn't matter what you say, your action speaks out in words. Now they believe their words speaks louder than the action. So they're completely inverted in every tool they use all over the world and polarised in the democratized state. And you can see that from the Vietnamese War, how much it changed their culture. When I was sitting back observing things as a worthless piece of shit and never man up to him, right? Because my words were worthless. So I sat back and thought instinctively my whole life and watched how the culture changed. Then I watched the Cold Wars, how they changed and how they commercial TVs and polarised into the news. Then they came out with social media, right? They came out with, the internet system, right? With Bill Gates. Then we can see people get polarised into another hypnotised state, tripling up with all the hypnotised and coming out with characters. Movie characters. Everyone's like a Hollywood movie character today and think there's something special in the whole world and can't even function with their natural organic motor skills and cannot think instinctively. They can only think mentally. And that's recorded in documents today that in the World Transformation Movement by Jeremy McGibbs, the top biologist in the whole world, who is the top biologist for the IPCC reports, the primary public climate is stripped from your sixth sense. You know what that is? That's stripped from your natural organic motor skills to think naturally, and that's what they're telling you. Now you think psychologically, you're mentally 95 to 99% of the time, totally inverted with 5 sensitive negative fields. Right, by using your high IQ and sitting on a pedestal and think you know better, right, and manifest your own truth in some kind of bubble, in some kind of comfort zone, right? Now the whole world's full of selfish, egotistic, judgmental and competitive behaviour and think they're all special in the world. And using every one of those tools, or they fall into deceptions all that work because they can't handle the truth, can't face it, can't deal with it, so they fall in the comfort zone on social media platform for a new belief system with light, power and energy, quantum mechanics and fields and bullshit. It's about love, care and compassion, loyalty, honour, respect, inspiration and encouragement. You know, you as a loving, compassionate creature is thinking instinctively with 8 tools of what we call righteousness. Loyalty, honour, respect, moral inspiration and encouragement embedded in your DNA. Right? It's the only tools that's yours. Your moral instincts and not changing that bar is who you are. I've been watching the whole world twisting the fabric tooth non-stop to live in their own little bubble from generation to generation, right? Every time there's one of these events, we twist the culture in humanity and we normalise what was immoral yesterday, right? In every single one of these events. That's why you're in post-human states no longer human. Because you're moulded that much for these events from the Vietnamese War, the Cold Wars, the internet system, and then 9/11 with social media platform. People were so polarised that between 1999 and the year 2019, in 20 fucking years, it went up 5 times worse in consumption and mental disorders and DNA defects. Methamphetamines gone up 5,000 times in use since 1980. ADHD medication's gone up 36 times in use. And 93% of people die from stress-related diseases every day and take drugs and numb themselves because they can't cope. It's a known fact. It's on DNA evidence and cellular study research all over the world. And people can't wake up to how much they were molded when they came into this world. Right? That's why the last human beings born in 1960, they can think instinctively and not think mentally with a high IQ. And that's what makes you intelligent. Now we have homotech babies all over the world completely rattling, right, thinking that elderly's, right, a burden on society. And they're saying it on the mainstream media. Right? That's how immoral they become. Right? That's how immoral they become. And they don't look after the elders in that. They expect them to wipe their ass from for the rest of their life because they depend on the system so much with multiple chains wrapped around them. They can't function anymore because they're completely stripping their sixth sense. It's not hard to see. Right? And the tools that everyone uses. Well, thank God that I was sitting on the fence watching this from generation to generation while everybody fell asleep and got molded in this. And everyone's affected by this to one degree or another. 9/11 is a great example of how you molded the whole world. And by 2010, everyone was conquering and dividing. 10 years later, everybody's conquering and dividing with selfish, egotistic, judgmental behavior. Family, lovers, and friends were conquering and dividing. No one talking in the streets anymore. All selfish and egotistical bring their kids up with an iPhone like a cotton wool baby. So they're polarised by 8 years old and sexually frustrated and think it's their best friend by the time they're 12 and completely disconnected from life, nature and things we're in harmony with and our natural organic motor skills. And it isn't hard to see that. So thank God I was a stupid idiot, sat on the fence and watched every single one of you and how you got moulded for the last fucking 50 years. And you think you're awake now? Seriously? I'm the mastermind in the world using my natural organic motor skills and bringing people back to that, back to their primal skills, right? While most of you out there depend on the system, depend on drugs, depend on numbing yourself, depending on the whole system, on educated knowledge with reverse psychology, you depend on quantum mechanics and living your own truth in some kind of comfort zone. Designed on social media platform. And social media platform and televisions, go look at the documents. It's designed specifically for psychological warfare. And now everyone lives in psychological warfare and don't have any faith in their own biological genes to think instinctively with their natural organic motor skills. Right? So let me tell you something, right? I got a lot of followers here. Right? A lot of followers here. And they collapse all the time. Right? They think they know everything when they come along here for 5 minutes. Right? And they think they know the whole 9 yards. Right? Let me tell you something. Are you a mastermind recorded on documents? Can you create miracles that you can't explain? Can you teach people to go back to the primal state? No, you can't. You keep exercising the same BS over and over and over. And the way you think and judge, because you cannot change the way you think and judge. You're using your 5 senses every time you text. Every time you do 90% of your things because you think with your 5 senses with a high IQ 95 to 99% of the time. You do not think instinctively. You do not think outside your mind. You think with your mind non-stop. And that's what the problem is, because now the world's possessed by the devil, declared by Jim McGibbs and top lawyers. The voice in your mind, ultimate time, being extinction. 93% of Western civilization beyond the point of turn in brain locked and night, completely stripped from their sixth sense. 93% die from stress-related disease every day. 93% of the Western civilization on every DNA event's done are on drugs to numb themselves because they can't cope. And that's a fact. Or they sit on social media platform and create dopamines and get high on their own supplies because they can't cope in real life. Now, let me tell you something. We're the only people here successfully bringing people back in the primal state. But 9 out of 10 people are spineless, weak cows and put their tail between legs. And that means the spine don't work, which is Jacob's ladder. And that's the tree of life inside you that activates your chakra, the gut feeling survival mode, to be alert, live, waking, aware with adrenochrome, right? In your primal state. To think instinctively and to think naturally. To think outside the mind, not with the mind. The shiver in your spine has got to activate your body cells with the outside influence in reality in the most positive fields. That will give you the encouragement to understand that when you break free from amnesia and this psychological mental state that you're in today, you break free from every single thing and every voice in your mind. That's the cure of every single thing, where you find the real truth. And the real truth is liberation. Liberation you don't understand, where you have the power, you have the confidence, right? And you stand up strong and you never give up, because you know what? Now you know the truth. And thank God that I always sit back on the bench, right? Like a witness to witness everything. Because let me tell you something. It pays to be stupid. It pays to think you're so dumb it's not funny, so you can keep on gaining. Because you never stop gaining no matter what level you're fucking at. That's one thing you learn about wisdom and knowledge, right? And about the most important thing in the world. You never stop fucking learning, and you never stop gaining no matter where your fucking head is at. Get your head out of the bushes and stop doing head miles and wake the fuck up to yourself.